Susie would like to know if Filmora offers opacity on images with the use of keyframing. And of course it does, but let's show her how to do it and maybe put a little extra in there. Okay, let's get the basics out of the way first before I start blabbering. Anybody that watch my videos tend to know that I tend to get off track a little bit and put a little extra media in there or information than what originally is asked for. So the question is, can she use opacity with keyframing in Filmora? Yes, she certainly can. So this is the basic setup in Filmora. This is the default layout, and this is our timeline. We have our media right here on the timeline. This is our media resource panel, and over here is our attribute panel, our editing panel. And what we want to look for is, well, first of all, let me back up on that. There is a tool menu right here for shortcut tools, and that menu can be changed based on a lot of these other things that are in here. So everybody's toolbar doesn't necessarily look the same because you can move these things around and everything. But this little icon here is the keyframing icon that we can apply to any piece of media. And it would actually highlight all of these. So for example, if I click this, here's our keyframe right over here, and it highlighted the transformation and compositing. And right away we give it away. Here is the opacity, and here is the keyframe. So the answer to the question is yes. So let's talk about how we use it, and then get into a little bit of fun stuff. Obviously, you know, you can transition between one or two different clips with just using a transition that fades in and out and so forth. But you can also do it manually via keyframing. You may be doing something special in between on the tracks above, whatever. So yeah, we can apply this keyframe to all of them, or we can choose just to apply it to the compositing. There's two elements in compositing. You can change the blend mode, and you can change the opacity. So let's focus on the opacity, and we're only going to focus on the opacity. So we're only checking this box, and it's now at 100%. We move it over here a little bit, and once we've placed one keyframe on a piece of media, then we don't have to place keyframes anymore. All we have to do is change an attribute. And changing an attribute right here, you see automatically applied a second keyframe, and we can see that the second keyframe is put on here. So here we go. Here is the basic fade. And we can see that it's fading out, fading out, fading out. And apparently I didn't fade very much. I should have faded to 0. It'll be a little more dramatic. So we'll just do this. So here we go, and now we're fading out. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So we can do that, and we can blend it in over whatever. Obviously there's a lot more things that we can do. But there's another thing that you can do with keyframes in Filmora, and it has to do with this path curve. Well, it doesn't. Path curve is one of the things in it. In other words, you can make your text fly all over the screen. You can make your video clips fly all over the screen. You can make it follow a certain pattern. But you may want to have a fade that occurs quickly in the beginning and then go slow, or vice versa. You want it to go really slow and then all of a sudden you want it to speed up. And you can do that by getting into this little compositing editor here. I'm going to move it up a little bit. When you do a fade, whether you're using a transition or you're using keyframes as we're doing here, it's a linear change from point A to point B. But what if we want on point A, and we're going to click this keyframe right here. Let's say we want the fade to start really slow. So there's some presets up here. So we can do this, let's say, okay, this one here is slow, and it puts this little handle on there. So now we can sort of pull that handle up, and rather than having a linear fade, we're going to start out slow and then it's going to speed up. And you know what? We can even click here and we can apply a different fade here. And I'm just using some of these standard ones here. You can not only change the curve this way, but you can also change the curve by lengthening the handle. And so now what we're having is a fast, kind of slow, but then a fast drop off, and then a slow here. Okay, so now basically you can tell there's a curve there that's different. And we can add additional keyframes right within our curve simply by hitting this plus sign here. So if we wanted to put in an additional keyframe, we could do that here. But I think I'm overdoing it. Anyway, so yes, you have keyframing capabilities plus is what I would say in Filmora, and it's very simple to use. So let's just exit the graph editor is what that's called. Excuse me for a loss of memory there, but basically that's it. So now what we have is a different kind of a fade effect. And we're, boom, it went black, and now it kind of slows out. You know, maybe if I had moved this keyframe over here, the effect might be more dramatic. I don't know. Let's, this is going to slow down the effect. Now, even though we're in the fading process, it's not happening. Hits the curve, now it's going fast, and now it's slowing out again. So that's just an example on top of basic keyframing. So yes, we can change compositing, and we change the opacity from 100% to 0 or to whatever it is that you want to change it back again. We can put another keyframe in here, and we can just change our opacity back to 100%. And now, of course, we've got just the basic linear becoming visible again. All right. I've already gone overboard with my blabbing. It's very simple to use. I won't get into how you use it with compound clips or whatever. You may have, well, there, look at that. I said it, and then I start talking about it. I'm not going to say any more. If there's additional questions about it, I'll be glad to make another video. As I'm sitting here putting the video together, I realized one other thing that I want to talk about. Mainly, opacity is used for, transitions between two clips. And so I wanted to cover one other aspect here in Filmora, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, one would just go to transitions and take the basic dissolve, and add it in here across these two clips. Okay, always put your playhead on top of what you're trying to expand on a timeline. Otherwise, you're going to shoot it off to the side like I just did. So like this is just sort of a basic blend, dissolve in and out. But you really can't do anything with this particular dissolve. So here's the cool thing. Let's get rid of that. And let's go over here. And if we go over here to this animation, video animation, here is these preset animations. And they have the legacy animations. These you can't do anything with. These do whatever they do. But this other group here, this is really cool. You can do stuff. Now here's a fade in and a fade out, twirly or whatever. So let's take the fade out, because I had a question about this the other day and I actually made a video on it. So let's put a fade out right here. You notice that when I drag it down, it doesn't just drop in like the other transitions. I can actually use the arrow, and you can see that it showed that little arrow down there. It actually put 2 keyframes on there for me automatically. So that's pretty cool. So in other words, I can now just drag this over or whatever to the end of that clip, and I would have a fade out. but it was pretty unusual. The fact that it put down these 2 keyframes for you automatically should tip you off that you can get into the graph editor this way. So if you use one of these preset and then you open up the graph editor, you now see, not very well here, okay, let me just scoot it back and shrink down this timeline a little bit. And you know, if we move this one down here, we will move all of the other keyframes up there. What it basically did was, when we use this fade out feature, we placed it here in sort of in the middle, but it gave us keyframes on each of the attributes that we can change. For example, the XY scale, XY position, path curve, which I'm not going to talk about today, and the compositing, the opacity. And so you click on the thing that you want to change. In this case, it's opacity. And so you notice it default to the X scale. So then that's what you would be changing if you change the graph editor. But we're talking about opacity today. So this is kind of like what we were talking about before. Using this fade out feature, we can now automatically get our 2 keyframes in there. And you know what? We should move it over here and move it over here. And we could actually add a fade in feature right after that, right in here. But we're not going to do that right now. I just want to demonstrate that these preset animations, like twirling your picture, zooming in and out, it's more than just fading in and fading out. It gives you the ability to time the fade or the twirl or whatever it is. They set up the basic animation for you, so you don't have to. Then you go in here and you play with the keyframes to you know, get whatever it is that you want out of that linear, which is the basic. So anyway, you get all the tools right there, right away, without having to add them manually. So I want to add that little feature in there. Sorry for extending this video, but I felt I wanted to say that.